This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, it's 6 p.m. I'd like to call to order the February 26th meeting of Easthampton Conservation Commission. This meeting will be conducted in person and remotely online to the greatest extent possible. Should an interruption occur in which the online meeting ends abruptly, both in-person and online meetings will not be restarted. All agenda items will be automatically continued to the next scheduled meeting.
Okay, great. Yep. And so when we get to your item, we will, if you're here for that item, we will make it so that you can use the turn on your screen and use your microphone. But right now that's turned off for everybody. And if you have any comments or questions, please use the raise hand function or utilize the chat. And just know that things in the chat aren't actually private. They're going to generate a transcript at the end. So we can go ahead and get started. I'd like to ask the commission to take item 8C out of agenda order, as we have someone in person for that item.
Can I get a motion to take item 8C out of order?
I move to take item 8C or 9C?
8C.
8C out of order.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call. Commissioner Carr.
Aye.
Commissioner August.
Aye.
And Commissioner Weeks.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, and this is item 8C, City of Easthampton, Nashwanik Pond, Mass DEP file number 151-288, aquatic vegetation management via herbicide and algicide. You've come to request for an extension of the permit.
Correct.
Yeah, and then I guess you can take it away and introduce yourself for the record whenever you're ready.
As Cassie mentioned, I'm here to apply for an extension permit for the odor conditions for the herbicide algicide application for Nashwanik Pond. Would a brief refresher course be good for people? Yeah,
Always good.
okay. So originally back in 2016, I filed a notice of intent and it was accepted. And then we filed for another extension that was given on April 25th, 2021. This one is coming due again in April, and so we are applying for another extension. Basically, going way back, and again, I got a lot of stuff here, but part of the order conditions was that before we could do any application, we would have to do dissolved oxygen readings. So I go out 4 or 5 days before the application is actually, when I say application, I mean the herbicide algicides, and check that the dissolved oxygen levels are sufficient. Whenever you treat a pond in such a manner, vegetation dies, and as vegetation dies, it uses oxygen. So we want to make sure that there's more than enough oxygen to accommodate, this excessive algicide application where, like I say, algae will die, macrophytes will die. We are not allowed to treat more than half the pond at one time for such reasons, and we don't even do that. We do roughly 8 acres of algicide, 8 acres of herbicides. This has been very successful for, going back to 2016. So we would like to continue with this process. We have an applicator, Solitude, who will be doing the work. We have a signed contract. Mayor has signed the contract to do this work again, but we have to get your permission before we can do any of this. Let's see if there's anything I can hand out to you.
So how long is the extension? Is it a 3-year extension? Or?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the first time we applied in 2016, we were extended to 2021, 5 years.
I see.
Which I'm not sure how we got a 5-year extension, if things were different back then,
I
or.
think it is technically possible, but I've never been here when we did it before, so I don't know if there's special rules around
Usually
it.
3 years has been the
That's the
longest.
typical.
Yeah, and that's what we're expecting here, is that we know that we're due, in April of this year. So we're not gonna try for another 5 years, we're going for another 3-year extension. This year is the areas that we usually treat. I can't say that this is exact.
Sure.
But year after year after year, it doesn't change a heck of a lot. And that's pretty much what we'll be treating this year. The more shallow the water, the more problems we have. In the center of town, which we call the bowl area, usually doesn't have any issues whatsoever, because that's roughly 15 feet in depth. Whereas the areas that we're treating here are, 3 feet, 4 feet, sometimes up to 8 feet. But it also depends on the actual location. Sometimes we get a lot of sunshine. Sometimes we get a lot of hot weather. So it's totally unpredictable. Also, the flow can change. Last year, we had an awful lot of rain. So places that ordinarily did have issues besides Neshonoc Pond didn't. So we don't know if we're gonna have a lot of rain or not, but at the same time, the chemicals that we use are contact chemicals. In other words, we can't pre-treat and hope to keep the herbicides and algicides in check, because the retention time of the pond is too low. It takes about 7 days to go from one end to the other, which is a very short retention time. So we have to wait until we get growth. Usually we try to treat around the first part of July. We don't want to wait too much longer than that, because it's not an attractive sight to see. People like to fish, people like, just to go down to the pond for scenery, whether it's boating. And if you see a bunch of algae and macrophytes, it's not the most attractive things. But like I say, we do have to wait, because we have to have physical contact with the herbicides, and the algicides have to have physical contact with what we're trying to treat. We use 2 different chemicals. The generic name is Captain. It's a copper sulfate, and that helps treat the algae. And the other one is Diquat, which is a copper based product.
What is it called?
Well, there's Captain and there's Diquat. Diquat. These are all been accepted by EPA, DEP for an awful long time. This is just the best we can do.
Those are the herbicides?
Pardon?
Those are the herbicides?
Well, there's one that's the herbicide and one is the algicide. The copper sulfate is used to treat the algae. Okay. And there's a lot of overlap there. Usually where there's algae, there's macrophytes, because the type of algae we have in the pond has a tendency to attach itself to the macrophytes. So 1 year we did try as an experiment to just treat the macrophytes and see what would happen with the algae. If the algae just kind of wouldn't flow over the dam and away, it did, but people didn't like to see these clumps of algae. They wanted to see the algae gone. And so we went back to treating both. And we did actually skip a year to see what would happen. And it wasn't an attractive sight to see. It was, if anybody's familiar with Neshonoc Pond, it's not the most attractive thing to do. And this is a problem that goes back as far as when I was a kid. I can remember swimming at what I still call the boathouse, but now it's the boat ramp.
Right.
But for me, it was the boathouse, because that's where I used to go swimming. And it just got to the point where you couldn't even swim without just getting covered with this stuff. But that goes back to the 70s. So back as far back as the 70s, there's been an issue. Part of the problem is that Neshonoc Pond has a really big watershed. It's a 10 square mile watershed. So all the nutrients, in 10 square miles go into the pond. We try to give education that, if you put chemicals on your lawn and fertilizers, they're going to wind up in the pond, unless you I was never a big fan of something like True Green and all these other companies that come around. But the reality is that they'll only put the right amount of chemicals in and not over fertilize your grass. If you ever drive by and see somebody's yard and there's a straight line at the property line and all the grass is yellow and dead, that was over fertilized. People think that, oh, if it says to put 10 pounds per square foot or whatever, I'm just making that number up, let's double that and then we'll get really green grass. Well, you're going to get dead grass. So you can't tell people not to have green grass. If they want their green grass, they're gonna go for it. So this does all go into the pond. We have a definite nutrient problem. Two main chemicals, nitrogen and phosphorus. Phosphorus usually is the limiting factor because nitrogen is almost impossible to control. You get lightning from, nitrogen even from lightning strikes. There's a lightning cycle, a nitrogen cycle in the air. Our air is 78% nitrogen. And part of that actually goes into the water. It's not very soluble in water, but it still goes into the water. Whereas phosphorus is usually the one you try to control, but for an aquaponic pond, it's just not feasible. If you look at the waterfall that just live there, the ducks, the geese, everything else, they poop and we have extra phosphorus in there. So if we had our way, we'd deal with this from a watershed issue, but because it's so large, I think the numbers are 212 to 1, which is crazy high. They say that anything more than 50 to 1 is almost impossible to control, just trying to deal with the watershed. So we decided that, let's clean up this pond. There was an aquaponic pond steering committee that has Winterfest, and there's been, it goes back to bowl-a-thons and pond dances and all the rest to raise money for the pond. And we've been lucky, we got some CPA money for part of the siltation basin that protects the pond from getting too much siltation in it. Originally it was 55 acres in size, now it's a little over 30 acres in size because it just fills in. It's a natural process, but man has made it so that it's been accelerated, cultural eutrophication versus just natural eutrophication. So our goal here, again, we do have a contract. We also have to apply to DEP every year for WMO permit, which we have received. They've kind of streamlined the process a little bit, which is it's a nice, easier process to deal with. So that they've approved the right for us to put these chemicals into the pond. Again, they want to know how much we're going to treat. We usually put down 15 acres just to cover ourselves, but we don't do that. We like I say, in the past, we've done a little bit more. And when I say 8 acres of each, it used to be a little bit more than that. So the whole idea and the goal is that the more you treat it, the less you have to treat it. It just doesn't come back quite as strong. But we seem to hit a kind of a roadblock where 8 acres seems to be. And again, we don't know for sure. The contract is open-ended with the city. I'll make that call when it gets closer to mid-July, early July, and I'll let them know where to treat and how much to treat. And the company is good. I sometimes have an awful lot of trouble getting them to schedule. They're a big company and they're growing, and I think they're having growing pains. So it took 15 phone calls last year to get them. And finally, there's one person there, Dominic, who kind of stepped up to the plate, and he made the arrangements, but it was like pulling teeth. Hopefully this year will be a little bit easier, and there's not a lot of choices out there. They're pretty much a monopoly at this point. They're buying up a lot of companies, but I trust them. They do the job right, and usually within a couple of weeks, the difference is quite noticeable. The one thing you will see there is still green is duckweed, Lemna minor or Wolfia, which is called water meal. And that's just that really small macrophyte. It's the smallest macrophyte that exists. And that still does cover the pond. And people sometimes think that that's, that the treatment didn't work. The problem is that the treatment will not work for Lemna minor or Wolfia. The surface area is just too small. Again, we're talking contact here. And when you have something that small, the contact area, it just doesn't stay. So there is a chemical out there that you could use. It would mean rewriting our whole notice of intent, or at least amending it. And it's only allowed to be used every third year because we're still, whether it's DEP, EPA, or whoever, is still not sure that treating with this particular chemical is the best. It's not going to cause any harm. The chemicals that we do use are historically, they're going to attack what they should attack, but the fish, and the frogs and turtles will not be affected. So it's good from that perspective.
When you're talking about the stuff you use in the duckweed, what is it called?
I couldn't tell you offhand. I did know at one point, but I'm old and my memory is just shot. So, and I guess I would have remembered if we were going to propose to use it. But we, at this point, there may be a time where the city decides that they want to try this, and you'll see me come back and say, hey, let's try this. But at this point, there's no plans on doing that. It's just something that you'll still see some green floating around in there.
So you just don't treat it? It's not like...
Yeah, it would be a completely different chemical in addition to the chemicals we're already using. So it's adding a third chemical. Yeah. And, I'm not a huge fan of using chemicals unless you have to. And in our case, no one has come up with a better alternative. If people wanted to, stop using fertilizers and all the rest, right, we could maybe do something a little differently. But for right now, this is the best way to attack it, and it does allow for people to use the pond. Whereas without treating it, it's just, you're not going to want to go out there and fish because your line's going to get all tangled up in the weeds. You're not going to want to go out boating because it's not attractive. You're not going to want to sit there and look at the pond because, again, it's not an attractive thing to see.
Well, it'll be dead.
What's that?
It'll be dead.
Well, it won't. Well, that's, if you didn't do anything, it would just, the pond wouldn't die per se. But over time, it would just fill up with more and more weeds. They're still going to die, except for they're going to sink to the bottom. They're still going to use up oxygen, and low oxygen is not good for anything that lives there, fish and so on. So it's healthier to treat a small amount and let these macrophytes and algae die, and not treat too much. And keep it, like I say, we can't even do this. We're not even proposing to do this without me going out and taking the dissolved oxygen readings to make sure that the pond can handle it. So,
any questions from the commission?
I have a contextual question, more for my education. There is, or maybe there was, another project using bagged barley straw.
That's part two of this project.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, I was wondering how these two projects.
Perfect lead-in. Thank you so much. I couldn't have paid you any better. You're like my setup guy. All right, we're good today. All right. So there is a part two to this.
Okay.
Again, it was proposed to put barley straw in the pond for a different reason. The barley straw, making it as simple as possible, will give off hydrogen peroxide. Mm-hmm. And hydrogen peroxide prevents the growth of cyanobacteria. Yep. People, it drives me crazy because even the state says algal, they call it HABs, hazardous algal balloons. Thank you. You are good. You're gonna team up here. But it's not even an algae. I can't for the life of me understand why people don't understand it's cyanobacteria. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was thought that it was an algae, and they called it blue-green algae. Well, with modern techniques, not me, but it was determined that it's not an algae at all, it's a cyanobacteria, but people have still held on to that blue-green algae part. And you know, if I could grab people by the shirt and say it's not algae, it's cyanobacteria, I would feel a lot better. The person I'm grabbing may not, but
yeah, I think blue-green algae is just rolls off the tongue an awful lot easier than cyanobacteria.
Cyanobacteria. If that's the reason, well, I don't know.
You just wear a shirt.
I know. To me, it's something like, if you're familiar with soils, there used to be a term modeling. And it's like when you have two different colors in your soil, it's usually some iron that has formed, as well as, so that's like the yellow part. And then the other part's more like a gray part. And that was always called modeling. Well, modeling now means something completely different, and the term is redoxomorphic features. Almost nobody says redoxomorphic features, they still say modeling. So I think when something is that ingrained, it's really hard to break, you know, the idea of using another term. But as far as that is concerned, we are proposing one slight little change. That, and this is the sign that we put up.
Sure, yeah.
And
don't steal the bags.
Right, and what it is it's basically onion bags filled with barley straw. And as far as where we put it in the pond, and I was actually a little concerned about this, is that, will this make the pond look like, you know, a trash pond?
Right.
But it's very, you know, it's sort of tucked away in the shoreline, and it's hard to even notice it. We have about a little over 20 different sites we use for the pond, and we're proposing to do it a little differently this year. We used to have a rosette of 5 bags, but we find at the end of the year that some of the barley straw in the middle is still barley straw. It hasn't decomposed whatsoever. So we're not proposing to change the locations. We're just proposing to add one more bag to the rosette and put less barley straw in each bag so that the barley straw will decompose more.
Yeah, sure.
Other than that, it's exactly the same as what.
And to your point and the problem, I helped stuff those bags.
Oh, good for you.
And you know, we didn't really know how much straw we were supposed to put in each bag. But I think in many cases leading to this problem, we jammed too much in.
Right, that's exactly
so,
it.
Yeah, the volunteers need to be told only put this much in the bag, and
Well, you
we'll
know,
be happy to do that.
It's new to Nashawanic Pond, but it's not new to being used in other places. This has been in Europe and done for decades. And whether or not it works, we haven't gotten any hazardous cyanobacteria blooms since. Now, like I say, last year we had a lot of rain, so it's possible that just there was a flushing mechanism that worked. But so far, so good, and nobody has ever determined that there's a downside to this. If you talk to, you know, some of the people that, you know, like Solitude, that puts in herbicides, algicides, and I shouldn't even say Solitude because the person I talked to is not against barley straw, but he sent me some information from other companies. They say, oh no, don't use barley straw, don't do this. Well, because you're doing something that you're taking money away from them. So they're gonna basically say, oh no, don't do this. Well, it's a low cost method that seemingly works. And we hope that, you know, with continued use, it will continue. Now, if for some reason all of a sudden we get blooms, we'll have to rethink this. And again, that's, you don't know from year to year. You could be, you know, again, if it's a really hot, sunny year without rain, there's still some people that don't believe in climate change, but let's be honest, climate change is here. And, you know, when you get the heat, you get not a lot of rain, you get a lot of stagnation, a lot of movement of the water, and it could come back. It could. We're not saying that this is a cure-all, but history says that this does its job. It should work without any downside to any other fish or frogs or anything else that lives in the pond. So that's what we're proposing. And this was an amendment to the original order of conditions 2 years ago, 1 year ago.
Something like that.
You know, it's really weird because I'm looking in my records and it said 2023, but I thought we did it for 2 years. Maybe we only did do it for 1
We
year.
did it for one so far.
Just one?
Yeah, I think so. I should look back at my records too. I couldn't say for sure.
Yeah, so I
now.
think maybe that was the first year. I don't know.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've been very lucky is that we've been able to tie in with some other agencies, and they come down with their equipment, and they are allowed to basically get counts on cyanobacteria. It's some kind of a meter that's like $3,000-4,000, so it's out of our reach. But they'll tell you how much cyanobacteria is in your water. The problem is that not all cyanobacteria is bad. It's just when it gets to be excessive. Something like Oscillatoria, I think Anabena, there's certain cyanobacteria which in excess is not good, whereas others are very, they don't do anything wrong. I've been working with Holyoke Community College in the Environmental Science Department for many years before I semi-retired, and I would always collect plankton samples from the pond for the students to look at. So these things have been in the pond forever. Like I say, every time I take a sample and I bring it back to the lab to let the students look at it under the microscope, it's there. It's just when it gets to be an excessive amount. And what it does is it's actually an algal cyst, which basically prevents growth. So it's not like, it's not even like killing something, because that's when the toxins are released. People say, well, just go and kill it. If you kill it, that's releases the toxins. So what we do with the barley straws, it prevents it from even growing, which is what you want to do. Once it's there and you kill it, it's the wrong method to use. So I don't know if there's any other questions.
Any other questions of the commission?
No?
Any questions? Oh, go
I
ahead.
just have a question. So, even though I know they're approved substances, the Captain and the, what's the other one? You said Dicot. I know that at least Captain, there's been a lot of studies about its toxicity to non-target species of other fish. Have you ever?
I'm not familiar with anything like that happening. I mean,
I was just,
if you don't use the proper amount, because you can go to.
can I just finish my question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So you said earlier something about a 7-day retention, and were you talking about the pond retains that substance for 7 days?
No, it's the
What
water
did you say?
that's retained. So if you start at Broad Brook,
Yeah.
and it takes 7 days for the water to go over the dam, which is
Oh, okay.
which is a very short period. So there's chemicals that you could use to prevent growth if there's a long retention time, but because this would flush out so fast, it wouldn't do anything.
Okay.
As far as toxicity to other mammals, whether it's a fish, which is not a mammal, but that's beside the point.
Like how long does it, what's the half-life of this?
Offhand, it does its job, and there is some residual amounts in the water. It's not like it just flushes itself out in 1 week or 2 weeks, which is part of why we want to do it the right way and not overdo it and not do the 15 acres that we're technically allowed to do, because we don't want these chemicals, kind of a little bit left over from this year, a little bit left over from previous years. We want to do the best we can to make sure that that just doesn't happen.
And do you test that? Like, do you test the copper sulfate levels over?
We don't, because you'd have to test the soils themselves, because that's where they would accumulate, is in the soils.
Okay.
As far as Captain, you can get it on Amazon. you can get it at Tractor Supply Company.
Yeah,
It's,
no, I get that it's totally approved.
yeah, so what I'm saying is that if the average person just decides they have a pond and they wanna treat their pond,
They can-
they can just go to Amazon and buy these, but again, it's very specific, the amount that you use, that you are not allowed to go over a certain limit, which is in one of those documents there. And, but if you're just doing it on your own, I happen to know somebody who used this on their own pond, and the results were not good. And then they were asking me why this happened, and I basically said, well, because you treated this improperly, you know. But people have, again, a tendency to just say, well, if I put in 5 gallons, why not put in 10 gallons of this stuff, you know? So there is specific, you know, protocol that you have to follow to do it properly.
So I guess what I was wondering, given that it seems like this is probably gonna be every 3 years into infinity, because this is not going away.
Right.
Unless we all go away. I was wondering if it would make any sense to have it like a condition of doing some soil testing at some point around the pond to see if the copper sulfate is accumulating in any way that would be concerning.
Yeah, it's something that, you know, the city could certainly take under advisement. Sure.
I don't know, maybe nobody else will do it, but
I mean, I guess you would have to start with a baseline before the treatment even started, because right now you may get a number, say 5 parts per million or something. But if you tested prior to even beginning this, that would have been the best way, is in 2016. But that's, to be honest, I don't know anybody that does that. I just don't. It's just not usually something that's part of the order of conditions. That doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Questions from the public?
I mean, just following up on that, why is it not done? I mean,
Why is it
you're saying that normally it's good to establish a baseline,
right?
because, you know, you do baseline, then you do treatment, and you can see, oh, did it work? How much did it work? You know,
Well, we know it works physically, but just by sight. Now, as far, I mean, say we treat July 1, a couple of weeks from there, you're going to see the actual decomposition of, as you see the macrophytes decomposition more than anything. The algae has a tendency to just sink and die, whereas the macrophytes take a little while. You can actually see a half dead, and then a 3/4 dead, and then basically it will die 100%. Now that there, again, why I say it's not a perfect solution, because when anything like that dies, it sort of creates a fertilizer for the next year. It just kind of keeps coming back and back and back. But if you don't kill it, it's going to die on its own anyways, and then, you know, then you could get fish kill because of too much oxygen being used up. I mean, there is an actual, when I wrote the notice of intent, there are, I think it's 5 parts per million of dissolved oxygen, which is a healthy level. So what I do is I take a top reading, and again, this is kind of complicated, but because it's at the top, and that's where the photosynthesis occurs, so you're going to get a lot of oxygen at the top. And then I take another reading in the middle, and then I take another reading at the bottom. Now, the bottom is where the decomposition occurs, so that's where the oxygen level should be the less. I always remember we used to take a class out to Pequot Pond in Westfield, and there's these guys fishing bottom, and I've taken dissolved oxygen readings, and I know there's no oxygen in the bottom, and I'm just trying to be a nice guy saying, you know, the fish are not down there, and you know, they're not being the smartest, but when they can't breathe, they're going to go where they can. Oh, we've been fishing this for years. So, you know, we go about our business, we come back. how'd you do? Well, we didn't get anything today, but we'll be back. Well, if you keep fishing bottom, good luck. But again, it's like people, they know more than I do, I guess. A lot of people know more than I do on a lot of things, I guess.
Well, I guess what I would say, if I'm the only, I think that the FDA approves all kinds of things, that just because they approve them doesn't mean that they don't have some degree of toxicity. It's sort of what's an acceptable amount. And given that we are charged with caring for the wetlands that are under the Mass Wetland Protection Act, I personally would like to see soil testing, just because copper is toxic to certain animals, and if it builds up over time in the water or the soil and it doesn't disperse, then that could become a concern. So I might be the only one on the commission that would want that, and I might not have the authority to even ask for it, but.
Well, you certainly can ask. I mean, you can ask for anything you want.
I might not have the authority to require it, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Like I say, it's something that, and I've been doing this for a while.
And I get that you are doing
Yeah.
trying really hard to make this as non-toxic as possible. I can tell your description,
Yeah.
so I'm not trying to say you're not doing a good job.
Right. I don't know. I guess I don't have a good response to that, other than, certainly something that I could bring up to the city, whether or not that they'll listen or not. I don't know. I mean, I'm here representing them, but I don't control what they want. But it's something that, I could certainly mention to them.
Yo, Gary, Dan Buttrick, speaking from the.
Hold on, Dan, we can't hear you for some reason. Let me hear you, no one else, because it's too quiet. Let me just change it really quick. I think it's just a setting I need to switch over to. The owl. Oh, here we go. Okay, can you say something now?
Something now.
Nice.
Yeah,
Perfect.
can you hear me now?
Perfect, we got you.
Okay. It's been a long time, but you guys would have, or the city, whoever, somebody did a ton of sediment sampling back pre-dredging project. So you'd have that baseline information. Granted, most of that sediment's gone now, but you could. My guess is that there was a lot of historical pesticide, herbicide use in the watershed that had accumulated in those sediments, which, might not be there anymore. And you may not have been testing for that, but you would have been testing for copper and zinc and arsenic and those kinds of things. So my guess is that whatever might be accumulating now through the modern organic herbicide use is probably nowhere near as bad as what would have been there pre-2007 or whenever that was, 2009. I forget when the dredging project was. Maybe you even have samples left over from areas that didn't end up being dredged or something like that too. You need to look at. Just food for thought.
Yeah. Excuse me. When we wanted to remove the sediments from the siltation basin, which was just filled with sediments, and so it was doing its job.
Mm-hmm.
That area there was definitely tested for a variety of, whether it's copper or a variety of different things. And when that permit actually, nobody was paying attention to it, and it's not really my job, except that now I've sort of taken on this role, is so that permit expired, so we had to start all over again. And luckily, DEP worked with us and realized that it would just be astronomical to start the soil testing all over again. It was just, it just wasn't feasible. So they allowed the previous data to be used. I do have data that goes back to 1988, I think, and there's certainly gaps in that. But I don't know if they tested for copper then, but I can certainly see what the levels were if they did. and I could look for when they tested for the sediments that were removed from the siltation basin, if there was any copper readings in there. But see, that's upstream, and so anything we're treating is downstream. So the copper wouldn't accumulate there; it would accumulate in its pond itself. So those numbers probably wouldn't help us a heck of a lot. And I know they're very particular because if you remember when we did dredge the pond, I think it was 2010. And part of that was to retain the water in Rubber Thread Pond. So basically a big dam was put up. Unfortunately, the water pressure blew that dam out. And so a lot of sediments wound up going way beyond the pond over the dam and down to the Liberty Street area. And it actually created a little island out there, which actually is not the worst thing in the world because the ducks love it. It's just like a little wetland habitat now, other than just open water. But we were asking about removing those sediments, and we couldn't. They said, no, you'd have to test this, you'd have to test that. So once the sediments are there, you can't just say, well, we're going to remove them. So basically, they stayed. But I can get any data that I have at my access. I probably have as much as anyone does at this point.
Well, I think I was thinking of something actually much simpler. Just if you start to do a soil sample each year, if you notice the copper level rises year after year after year, at some point it's going to hit a toxic level. So that's all. Yeah. I was thinking whether to Dan's point, maybe it's not useful because there is runoff from people's yards, and if they use it in their pond, it's going to end up in there anyways. Maybe it's not even a clear read of anything. Yeah.
There is an apparatus called an Ekman dredge, which basically you send down and the jaws close, and you can pull soil up that way. I've been very lucky to work in a lab where we can test for a lot of this, but copper is not one of them. So it'd have to get sent out to some kind of a lab for them to check out.
Okay. It's not standard.
Well, it's just, we can only, again, we're a small little community college and we can test for, 25 different things, but not 250 different things. And, it's probably, and again, I never looked into it because we never wanted to test for copper, but it may not be a hard test to do. It may be a very simple test to do. I'd have to look that up. But whether or not they would allow my testing with my equipment to make any kind of a difference versus a certified lab, I was very lucky in that I worked for the Hoyle Conservation, not work for them, but I had a deal with them. And when they were putting in an access road to HCC actually hired me to monitor it, and they allowed to matter. They just didn't say, okay, it's student data, but you're monitoring them. And the equipment that we use is actually the same equipment that a lab would use. We've always made sure that we're up to date with that. So it's not like we're subpar. We're as good as any lab would be, except we're not certified. So maybe that's another option. Maybe I could get some work study people or something to do this. I don't know. I'm only part-time there now, so my pull is not a pull to start with, but I don't know if I could get anything accomplished there. Things have really changed at the college, which is why. And again, if this is being broadcast, I've got to be careful here, but it's just not the same college. It's just not.
Any other questions from the public?
Anyone online, you can raise your hand if you have a question.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions or concerns, can I get a motion to extend the vegetation management and the National Pond for 3 more years?
I will make that motion to extend their management project for 3 years.
And a second?
Second.
All right, roll call. Commissioner Carr,
Aye.
Commissioner August, and Commissioner Weeks.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Oh, wait, we're on Patrick.
Oh,
Sid's sleeping. He doesn't want to get woke up.
we're gonna wake him up for a different thing.
Aye.
Sorry, Dan.
Okay. Well, I'll get that paperwork to you as soon as I can.
Yes,
for the extension.
and once we have all the signatures and everything, I'll probably get somebody from the pond committee to get this recorded, and we'll get that back to you.
Perfect. Great. Thanks, Gary.
All right, Gary, thank you.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Good to see you all.
Yeah, good to see you too. And then the next, I would request the commission take item 8O out of agenda order for the 50 Florence Road project.
All right, so.
Might take my visual.
Oh,
Whatever.
And that's fine.
And take some candy.
Oh, that's bad stuff.
That's
true.
M&M's like that. Problem that you don't get all blue one, that one from. You start and to stop is still almost impossible.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna leave, so like, don't eat your whole back.
All right, can I get a motion to take 8O out of order, please?
Order.
Second,
Second.
roll call, Commissioner Carr,
Aye.
Commissioner August, Commissioner Weeks,
Aye.
and Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Oh, and I need to recuse this.
Sure. All right, so it's Beacon Folder LLC 50 Florence Road.
Yeah, we've got Matthew Baker and Pete Warren here for this item. They've submitted new documents, so I don't know if you guys want to just take it away. You can share your screen if you want, if that's easier too. I have a copy as well of what you sent me last, if you want me to show that as well. Whatever you prefer.
There we go. Give me just a second. Let me see if I can get it to pull up. All right, so everybody able to see the Google Earth drawing?
Mhm.
All right. One of the comments was, that the scale was kind of off on it, and this particular drawing was made more for just a visual of potential impact. So it's really not to scale for that reason. I mean, we don't know exactly until we get out there how far up the project this is going to go, but we've done some revisions after our last discussion, and we've included these areas of impact we've talked about before. For those that did miss that meeting, there was impact coming from off-site with water, and also a ponding issue on the north side of this particular section of our project. We're going to have to kind of mitigate that by installing a small swell of some type to push the water towards the downside of the project and off into the southeastern side of the site. Is blue line here is our check dam that we're going to have to aid in the slowing of and the velocity dissipation of the water flow that's going to be coming off. But we do not foresee a strong velocity coming off this site. We're spreading about a 4 foot to 5 foot wide swell. That's probably only going to be cut maybe 4 to 8 inches at the most. With the size of the swell probably at a 5-to-1, it's going to be a very low, shallow type situation. So it's not going to be anything drastic. But the water will flow through the riprap and outside of our limits of disturbance for this particular area, and it's northeast of the 100-year floodplain. So we're not impacting anything but what's on our site.
Yeah, and the question about the PDF that we had that just had some visual representation, so people could actually. One of the questions last meeting was about where this was going to flow and how close it was going to be to the stream and property lines, that sort of thing. So it was more just to show that there's quite a bit of space through our site that this water is going to be. We're trying to channel the water toward. As you can see, that lower arrow, there is water coming in from off of the site that we're just basically trying to continue to flow along. If it gets to the point where it actually does flow, I don't expect there'll be any volume per se. If we got a 3-inch rainstorm, there would be potential runoff as there would in other areas of the site, but nothing outside of. I mean, we're not talking about, anything more than typical rainwater. So, and that this whole area is currently vegetated, and the swale will continue to have vegetation. There shouldn't be any issue with. I don't even really see water probably making it out of the site with normal rainfall.
Yeah, the green arrows are for, what's naturally flowing right now at this current moment. The red arrow in the center here is kind of the proposed swale location to where we want to drive that water down to this area around the riprap. Questions and comments?
I was just going to ask a question. As I understand it, the idea is going to be to conduct this project after you've got, some drying, as spring moves on, then, and that obviously you can't predict that. Once you start, how long do you think it would take?
Estimated to take us about a week to do the actual construction process. Tack on about 3 to 4, maybe 5 weeks for vegetation stabilization.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, all in, estimate end of May for final, so we can close out that notice of intent.
So where the red arrow is, you're going to create a swale in that red arrow area to direct it towards the blue area?
That's correct. We want to direct this water that is currently ponding, that has been coming from the offsite over here where this green arrow is. A lot of this is blocking up what naturally is actually happening. So we don't know if from construction that we have blocked it up or not. We can't really tell. The last time I was up there looking at it, it was snow covered. So I couldn't tell you exactly, what was blocking the water and ponding on our site. But we can tell you over, photos that I've seen, that water is coming in from off-site under our fence and into this natural area right here.
So how do you create that swale without disturbing all your panels or your structure for your panels?
Good question.
Actually, yeah, that's really not. These panels are elevated, and they're on a tilt system, so it's not like a traditional static racking where where your panels are close to the ground. These panels here can be, they can be rotated to flat, and you can almost in half of that area you could almost drive a skid steer underneath the racking. So we would be using a small. Either a small skid steer or a small mini to do any work that is involved anywhere in between, in where the panels are. So
you don't see it as a problem?
No, absolutely not.
None at all. It's particularly going to be flathead shovels, spadehead shovels, a lot of rakes, landscape rakes, and minimal amount of equipment. Typically, you're going to be your stand-on. Toro makes a product called the Dingo, which is a stand-on that's got a bucket front end that we can utilize. So,
yeah, we're talking about pretty minimal impact. I think I don't know who. I think some of you guys were on the call the last time around. The impact is going to be pretty minimal to this to get this worked, to just get this water to start moving out of the area where it's currently ponding. And when we were there with Cassie, the pond area had shrunk considerably, and that's obviously due to the the 6 months we had of last year where we got 30 inches of rain. I don't think we've had 30 inches of rain since that. So it's performing. The water is starting to filtrate down into the ground, but as we also mentioned, there's clay through that area, so it doesn't filtrate quite so quickly. But we're not talking about anything that would really affect the change of the plan, nor we're really trying to have as minimal amount of impact as we can to try to alleviate this ponding issue.
I missed the call last week. How like wide and deep is the swale approximately? Sounds like it's going to be done by hand mostly.
Mostly by hand. So you're talking anywhere from 4 to 8 inches, just enough that we can get positive flow moving southward.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing, no high velocity. You're probably talking maybe 1/8 of an inch over 75 to 90 feet. So it's really very minimal depth at all.
And the riprap check dam or whatever, what does that look like?
It's going to look pretty much your let me fix this.
Probably 3 to 5, maybe 6 inch minus, and it's really I don't foresee us having a problem there. It's really just an added BMP to be there in case of a larger flow, like a larger rain event storm where we would have potential riffling.
Mm-hmm.
But as we said, with the site being vegetated, I mean, that's all grass right through there. And on the other side of our limit of work is also a grass field, which you could see from that PDF picture. And that picture was just kind of meant as a kind of because one of the questions we had last week was how close are you to the little stream that runs through there? And as we, if you see just kind of straight to the left of that picture where our pad is, where the water is currently draining, it's much closer to the stream there than it is down in the lower corner, where if water does tend to drain where we're trying to direct it now, it's going to hit that field. And it's probably about 100 yards worth of grass field right there before it even gets that waterway. So it would have to, it's also pretty flat, that site. It would have to be a massive amount of rain to even probably get out of our site per se. I don't see, there's almost no way water would filtrate into the ground before it hit even that tree line in either direction. There's quite a bit of vegetation there to hold any water that would potentially run into the site. So
what I'm wondering is if that riprap is kind of set down below grade, so the top of the riprap is at existing grade through there, if maybe water runs its way down the swale to the riprap, if those larger pore spaces in the riprap would actually maybe provide opportunity for water to infiltrate there and help it, so that it's not even going offsite, at least maybe for smaller storms. Do you think that's a possibility? Or am I not picturing the riprap detail correctly?
Yeah, I think I honestly would say the riprap is really more of just a fail-safe. I don't really envision, once this thing drains out, the area we're talking about where there is potential ponding is probably 75 to 100 yards across. It's quite a large area, and if we take that area and let that water just continue to move, you know, it would have to be a multiple inch storm in order to even probably have any positive flow hit that riprap. I mean, we can, the riprap was more of just a kind of a suggestion to help aid in the BMP. I mean, we can do, you know, if you guys have suggestions, I'd be happy to hear, you know, what you would potentially like to see there. I mean, you know, Matt's a civil engineer, so Matt has obviously very good insight to what, you know, what we could do here. But I don't see, I mean, A, I don't see sediment even hitting this check dam area, and B, the check dam is really more just as a, you know, a potential, an additional diffuser if water does hit to that area. Again, it shouldn't be filtrated at all anyway. If it does hit that, and it does, as you said, it just helps to deviate the flow and just kind of, you know, prevent any scouring through there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the problem I'm having is, we don't have a detail now. I just wouldn't want for us to go out and look at it once it was. Oh, we do have a detail. Okay, there it is.
Yeah, sorry. This is actually a Indiana project that I'm also working on right now. But you know, we would go with the Massachusetts version of this rock check dam. So, you know, Indiana is calling for the geotextile fabric to be on the surface of the ground, with the rock on top of it for the check dam. Now, what I'm envisioning you're looking at is that we cut a small little trench, fill the trench with a riprap number 6 stone or 6-inch stone.
Yep.
Fill it up and
modified rock fill, probably.
Modified, yeah.
Call it, yeah.
Yeah, raise it, elevate it above the surface, so you know it would actually dig in right here, and you would have rock fill, and then you would have a small amount of rock over top to kind of slow down that flow and kind of, I guess you would say, back charge this backside and keep the water slowly trickling out instead of heavy flow out. Because most check dams that I run into, because I do all the inspections in Georgia, Indiana, Mississippi, and all, check dams are never managed after construction is done. So sediment always builds up, and then once sediment builds up, it goes over top of that check dam. Is that your concern, or am I reading it wrong?
I'm just trying to make a picture in my mind of what we're expecting to see. You know, like with a check dam like this, I picture these in swales where they tie into the grade on either side, and it's pretty flat here, and the swale is pretty small. And the way that check dam is on the sketch is it looks pretty long. So I don't know. I'm just trying to imagine what we're looking for, but
I don't think it needs to be much bigger per se than the swale itself. Like whatever the depth or the width of that swale is going out to that area,
yep.
Maybe it extends several feet beyond. But I mean, it shouldn't need to be. I mean, again, it's not even really. I wouldn't say it would be necessarily a required thing. I think it would be more of as an aside, as an additional BMP to try to help if it ever gets to the point where there is water hitting that particular space. I mean, we're also talking, that's about 70 yards from the edge of the glass to where that corner is. So it's quite a large space where water is going to, you know, move through and potentially filtrate just into the ground as it moves that way anyways. So.
Yep.
What's the vegetation like in that area that you're describing? Is it just grass?
Which area are you talking about? Where the panels are, or where?
You're saying where the infiltration would happen naturally before it hits the rock dam.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's all, the whole area right now is currently grass. There's full vegetation. I mean, on the inside of the site is fully vegetated and all grass. And on the outside of the site where that green triangle field is, that's 3 or 4 foot tall, just, a grass field there. So.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to go out and I can't tell you species of the grass blades that are out there, but it's pretty well stabilized.
Yeah, I mean, it's
grass growth, heavy vegetation.
Yeah, we didn't have any disturbance in that area, so that's all naturally existing. You know, whatever the rest of the fields are that they have out there, it's all that same grass. And it was, I mean, it's you know, it's at least in the summertime, it was at least waist high, even a little higher sometimes. So, what's that?
The grass was waist high.
Oh yeah, yep, yeah. Those fields, I was out there before we even started doing work, and those fields were. The grass was up over the hood of my truck, and I got a large 1500 truck, and you know the grass was as high. I mean, it's up to the windows basically in my truck. You know.
Looks like it probably was a planted hay straw type field. Used probably the bale hay and give to the horses. So I'm not 100%, but that's what it looked like and appeared to.
Yeah, I'd say it's whatever they use for when they're baling up, because there were actually, Cassie can attest to this. There are hay bales that were right in the front, right by our entrance, that were just left there from the farmer. So they were the big kind of the round bales with the plastic wrap that was on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just asking because I wondered if forgive the phrase, but beefier vegetation would absorb more water. But if it's waist high, maybe it's irrelevant. So.
Yeah, I mean,
it's fairly beefy. It's good and lush and thick.
Yeah, I don't see water ever getting to that tree line in any circumstance, in any direction. So,
Cassie, did you get the info on the minor repairs to existing controls?
So, yeah, that's more related, in my opinion, to the suspended reporting request.
Yeah.
Because it's just these minor repairs. I don't know, Pete, I know you confirmed with me that you were going to talk to Brown Construction about making those changes. I don't know if that's happened yet or not. It wasn't certainly something that was like time sensitive, in my opinion. It was like just something we need to have definitely, short up.
We talked. They're going to try to get out there this week, weather dependent, and fix the BMP inside in between the two sites. So that should hopefully be done this week.
So what are we approving?
Yes. So what we're trying to decide right now is if basically they're proposing this kind of grading as a minor change to the plan, because right now, if they did this work without talking to us first, when we came to get the as-built, it won't match up with what we approved. Yeah. So they want the commission to issue a minor administrative approval for a minor change for this work to go forward to deal with this ponding issue. From a Wetlands Protection Act DEP policy standpoint, when the commission considers minor changes, one of the things DEP wants the commissions to avoid is approving minor changes that would increase impacts to jurisdictional areas.
Yeah.
That does seem like where the grading is proposed is outside of any of the 100 buffer zones or the floodplain or anything like that. So in my opinion, it's meeting that standard. There is a question of, I know Julie's comments were related to stormwater calculations and impacts to stormwater and making sure it still meets the stormwater standards despite this change, which I don't know, maybe Dan Buttrick might have something to say about that or what you guys would like to see in relation to that. I can read Julie's comment here in a second. And then the other thing that DEP wants people to consider is making sure that the change doesn't result in a change in the scope or kind of like the intent of the site, which I don't think is the case here at all. So if I can, I'll read Julie's comments if you guys want to hear what she had to say about this proposal. It sounds like some of these things were addressed already.
Yes.
But she wrote, I'm not clear from the simple graphic what they're proposing. Is the red area to be graded? Sounds like we've confirmed that it is. How is that going to be accomplished with panels in place? They're going to use hand tools and small equipment. What are the dimensions of the swale and the side slopes? I think, what did you say? I had it written here, some ratio.
4 to 5 feet wide, 6 to 8 inch depth. Slopes would be about a 4 to 1, 5 to 1, probably even greater than that, to be honest with you.
Excellent, thank you. Will this swale become a source of erosion leading to sediment movement / TSS pollution? The call out indicates moving water to off-site. How close are we to the property line? Stormwater from the project needs to be handled on-site and cannot be pushed onto surrounding properties. Have any calculations been provided to demonstrate that runoff volume and how flows are being attenuated. We should expect the same standards in terms of attenuation and treatment from this change that we would have for an initial stormwater application. Have they demonstrated that they're meeting those standards? And then she said, I'm generally not in favor for reducing reporting requirements while this drainage issue remains unaddressed, but will defer to those who have been on site recently. So those are her comments related to this particular issue and what's been presented so far. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. But yeah, basically what's before the commission right now is whether or not you want to accept this change. You think it's compliant with the standards.
Dan, what do you think about the stormwater?
My inclination is to think that the current situation isn't what was modeled for both pre or post conditions, and that probably what they are bringing it back to, which is kind of getting the water off the site, is consistent with how the site was modeled originally. But I guess I'd defer to the applicant as to that.
So was the question whether the original modeling was to have the drainage go off-site?
Yes, the approved drawings from the original startup has water shed off to the southeast there as normal, and keeping with the already stabilized area and stabilized flow lane that was already created prior to us being there.
Does this create an increase to that?
No, it does not. This is actually taking what was already in place. Let me pull up my drawing real quick. I'll show you again the impact area. So this,
I would also say that the existing conditions are just slightly different than what they actually are, and this is where, you see a lot of situations. You probably see, I'm sure you have plenty of solar projects going out there where water does tend to kind of pool or hits a low area and tends to scour out toward another area. I don't think the mitigation of that. There's not a stormwater feature that was designed to be here. There's no basins or no feature that would need to be calculated to be in this particular area. And we're just trying to deal with, an existing condition that was unforeseen. And, it's just a natural kind of a little basin right in that middle area. So we're just trying to help the water continue to flow or to move where it would, where it would just, and there's more dirt on the lower corner where we are. Then the clay area tends to be more into the middle of that field from about the midsection where the break is all the way off to the left. I'm sorry, all the way up to the right. That big dotted line right there, that lower area down to that middle area tends to be more clay. So there just happens to be an area with clay that's kind of holding this water up. And it's, we're just trying to help move it along to keep where it'll, and again, as our grass establishes, we've only had grass there for a year. As that grass continues to fortify, it's just going to become more. It will do more filtration itself. It'll suck up more of that water just by its own. By feeding its own roots.
So as we stated, the design was already in place before we even come on site to where this water would naturally drain this way based on the hill curvature that I saw on site from the way this area was already built. When we designed it out, a couple of years ago, I actually was not employed when this one was designed, but judging by what I've seen on other drawings, there was zero to very minimal earthworks that was done in this area. There was not many elevation changes, maybe a foot here or a foot there kind of a thing. The big elevation change came right here, if my cursor's right where this check dam is going to go in. There was an elevation change in this area because we have a piece of equipment that's just right here where my hand, cursor hand is, that ties into this big electrical component. So that's one reason why we have to choose going this route, is that piece of equipment. But naturally flowing, this line right here is part of that buffer that we've got. This water flows off site to where this green arrow, and then infiltrates into our site, which, like I said, there was very low amount of grading activities that was done in this area. Most of the grading that was done was basically to turn over the topsoil so that we can get a better grass and vegetation growth. So it's the only impact that we particularly did in this area was to establish better grass growth. So yeah, this is all natural flowing as it pertains, prior to us even coming on site.
Questions?
I mean,
Any other questions from the public? I guess go ahead.
I don't know if you're talking to me, but I have one more question, and that is, can you just state for the record what the dimensions of the riprap check dam would be?
it would be the width of the swell. We'll know better once we get on site. I'm estimating anywhere from 4 to 5 feet in length, potentially 2 foot in width to 4 foot in width, which would be thickness, and probably the height of about probably about 10 inches above grade currently. So it'd be probably 2 to 3 rocks stacked.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I guess what I'm hearing, like, from a big picture, is that this, if you were aware of this issue before the solar was in place, then it might have been possible just to, like, kind of skim the ground around with, like, a bulldozer bucket to get the water flowing in the right direction. But since it's you're using hand method and work on raise, the impact would be minimal. But again, the intent is to make things work as they were intended to have worked, and most did work before the array was even installed. Is that all, like, about correct?
Yeah, that's accurate. The other thing too is we didn't have any, we didn't have any problem in that area with water pooling up when we were in construction, and when we were basically almost done with the actual full construction of the site before we ever had an issue in that area with that massive, we had just a couple of months where we just had a massive amount of rain. Had we have seen that in the front end, before, or in the grading stage before we were actually, able to start working the construction, we would have done basically what we're talking about doing right now, probably without the need for the check dam, because again, we didn't really have a water issue there until that water just kind of, again, it just didn't have anywhere. It just wouldn't filtrate because of the clay. So, but prior to that, maybe 6 months, 5-6 months from the end of last year, we had no problem for almost a year in that area. So, and I'm not sure that we would have a problem really going forward. It just, we have to, with normal, storm cycles and potential rain that you guys have in that area, I don't really foresee it being a problem. I think it'll just naturally rain and will just dry up before it even gets to where it is pooling up at all, so.
Well, we don't really have a normal anymore, so it's good to prepare for 100-year storm events being every year now.
Well, hopefully that's not going to continue, but I can't speak for Mother Nature. She seems to have her own way of doing things here. So.
Great. That's all my questions, Jay.
Okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you, without being on the site, do you have any major concerns about making this change as a minor change?
No, I don't.
Okay, all right, thanks. Anyone else have any
I don't.
major concerns? I don't. All right, so can I get a motion that we make this a minor change?
Motion to approve this minor change.
Is there a second? Second. Roll call, Commissioner Carr,
Aye.
Commissioner August, recuse, sorry, Commissioner Weeks.
Aye.
And Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and Cassie, I'll give you an update when I get it, when I know for sure when Brown's going to be heading out there, because I plan on meeting them out there as well. And then Dan, I don't think you were here last week, but this when this construction is actually, when we start working on this, myself or Matthew will be out present for the work. So, and we'll keep you guys updated on what's going on. So,
Excellent.
yep.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the time. So.
Good night.
Okay,
All right.
so I would request the commission consider taking item 9B, 385.
Oh, one more thing real quick. Sorry, Cassie. Can you just, will you send an email to me so that I can update the owners and everyone, all of my, my executive leadership team, just to let them know that we can proceed with this work?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
You're
Tim.
welcome.
All right, can I get a motion to take 9B out of order?
Okay, I move we take agenda item 9B out of order.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Roll call, Commissioner Carr,
Aye.
Commissioner August, Commissioner Weeks.
Aye.
We still have Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Okay.
Cassie, do you need some more paper?
No, I have my next notebook. I'm just like almost ready to transition over to it. I know, yeah. I tried to come prepared. Thank you, though. I appreciate that. But yeah, Mark Bonsley is here from Kestrel Land Trust. If you want to take it away, we're continuing discussion of the Kestrel Land Trust conservation restriction proposal for the commission to be a co-holder. I don't know if we want to talk about it again, but I can update just quickly about what I got from Jeff. Because mainly the big thing so really quick, Kestrel Land Trust is proposing that the Conservation Commission agree to be a co-holder of the conservation restriction with the Mass Audubon Society, or Mass Audubon Group. And then the commission had asked to get some kind of confirmation from Jeff Bagg, the city planner, as to whether or not he endorsed such a setup being created. And I can read this letter if you guys are ready.
Sure.
Okay. Hi, Cassie. Please provide this to the Conservation Commission members. On behalf of the Planning Department, I believe that it is an important opportunity for the city of Easthampton to have the Conservation Commission be the co-holder of the conservation restriction for 385 Main Street. The 385 Main Street project is a truly unique opportunity for Easthampton to combine open space preservation and affordable housing. We are very pleased to be part of a partnership with Kestrel Land Trust and their partners to preserve the remainder of the parcel. The arrangement is desirable since the monitoring requirements for the CR will be handled by Mass Audubon and Kestrel Land Trust. Our co-holder status will be essential for potential future CPA funds to be used to assist in providing public access to the property. It will also come without a financial responsibility to pay for the third-party monitoring, which will be supported by Kestrel and its partners. I do want to acknowledge the need for the planning department to better monitor and manage its existing open space properties. The general approach to this will be to eventually add a sustainability coordinator position aimed at supporting climate resilience and green initiatives. By adding that position, it would allow for the expansion of the conservation agent position to more actively engage in land management and land preservation work. However, we will be best suited to sign on to the CR for 385 Main Street while continuing to pursue additional staff support. Sincerely, Jeff Bagg, City Planner.
What is CPA?
What are they?
What does that stand for?
Community Preservation Act.
Okay.
And it's basically like Jay probably described it better than me because you're on
I represent the Conservation Commission on the CPA committee. So it deals with funding. It's that little percentage in your property tax, that 1.75% or whatever it is these days that comes out automatically, that goes into a fund that can be used for things like open space or low-income housing. So that's what the fund is for, to fund projects that would never get funded in any normal world.
Yeah.
Do you want to read the comments that Julie had?
Yeah, yep. And then you can turn it over to you, Mark. But Julie said, I read through the CR and am comfortable with the language. If Jeff is in support, I have no issues with the Concom being a co-holder of the CR, as long as we are not obligated to maintenance or reporting. I wouldn't automatically rule out those options, but there would need to be a larger conversation if our time was needed on an ongoing basis. Keeping the property eligible for CPA or other funds by having city involvement with the CR makes good sense to me. You're welcome.
What letter?
What's that?
What letter?
This is an email that I reached out to
No,
Julie.
I mean this project.
Oh,
You said-
nine, agenda,
Yeah.
9B.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I think I'm playing catch up here a little bit. There has not been to be
We've never done this before.
right. I assume there would be like some kind of memorandum of understanding at some point as to who was doing, right? Just
Yeah,
so it wasn't clear once we're all dead.
Thanks for the
So Mark provided a draft that has it in there of what the CR is, right? And that will lay it out there as well.
Well, yeah, no, I first of all, I just
Oh, yeah.
good to see everyone again, and I want to thank Jeff and the planning department for their endorsement. That's wonderful to have. Been great partners so far. Yes, right prior to the meeting, I provided Cassie a template. I wouldn't call it a draft.
Okay.
It's an example of another memorandum of agreement involving Mass Audubon and another land trust, Mount Grace Land Conservation Trust. And I actually think it could form a good template for this arrangement. I did a little digging, the conversation last time in the last meeting, I still wasn't necessarily clear about what the best path forward would be. Should we modify the CR draft itself to break down the roles of the two grantees? And I think between that meeting and tonight, I've come to the opinion that a memorandum of agreement would be the easiest way to do it. And again, what I provided, I think it's a good template because it breaks down the component responsibilities of the grantees in a CR. And those really fall into three main areas. One is monitoring. One is any approvals that are required under the CR. And I want to be clear, since we're talking about a Concom here, that any wetlands permitting, that's separate from it. This is just any approvals that are required by the CR itself. And then enforcement. So those are kind of the three areas of responsibility. And this memorandum of agreement, again, just an example, breaks those out. And I can't talk for Mass Audubon. I would think that even if this is a good template, any conversation, to come up with those responsibilities for this property would have to take place between the Concom and Mass Audubon in the future. But again, this lays out things that, can be discussed, I think, pretty well. I personally think this goes a little too far, just in the sense of, at least in this agreement, it's a little tricky, because we read through this, the roles would be reversed. Basically, Easthampton, City of Easthampton would be playing the role of Mass Audubon in this agreement, and Mass Audubon would be playing the role of Mount Grace, so it's a little confusing there.
Yeah.
But I noticed in this agreement, particularly when you turn to the second page, number 4, the last line, and it says the decision to enforce a conservation restriction violation shall rest solely with, in this case, it would be Mass Audubon. So in this agreement, basically, one of the grantees is giving up just about any, role for enforcement. I don't know if the city wants to necessarily go that far, but that's something that could be discussed with Mass Audubon. You could have an arrangement where the two grantees agree to collaborate on enforcement, or whether they can, either singly or jointly enforce if they decide to, and come up with a whole arrangement if they decide that, if there's a disagreement. If Mass Audubon says this isn't big enough for us to enforce, but the city disagrees how that's handled, that can all be kind of laid out. But I would think that it sounds like from our initial discussions with the city that the city would like to pass up on its responsibility to monitor, put that solely on Mass Audubon. and possibility to do just basic approvals. Anytime we would be the landowner here, Gus would be the landowner, we'd be the grantor. So we'd be going to Mass Audubon saying, hey, the CR says that we need your either written approval, we need your written or verbal approval to do this. So we'd be going to Mass Audubon instead, and they'd be kind of taking the lead in that. We wouldn't be going to Mass Audubon and the city for everything. That would seem to kind of smooth things over. And then again, I can't talk for Mass Audubon or the city, but I would think enforcement would be something you'd want to think about and how that's handled. But yeah, so that's kind of my basic take. Again, this is the example given to us is a recorded memorandum of agreement between the two grantees, and I don't know if the grantor is on here as well. I would have to look. It doesn't look like it. I think it's just the two grantees, so that would be the city and Mass Audubon. Yeah, so I think that would be the easiest way forward and would address some of the concerns that the planning department brought up for us without being overburdened potentially for being a co-grantee here. Secondary grantee.
I appreciate you explaining that, because I think I was confused that you've given us the draft CR though, right?
Yeah, so giving you the draft CR.
But all that does is list out who the grantees and the grantors are and like the rules of the CR. Whereas we need the memorandum to flesh out how we share the responsibilities with Mass Audubon.
Yeah, because right now they're kind of co-equal as they're written in the CR, and basically I got that in just because the CR process is going at a glacial pace right now at the state. You needed to get it in like ASAP. So I kind of took that liberty, and changes could be made to that draft as well. Absolutely, that's a problem. But this could further, differentiate kind of what the individual responsibilities are of the two grantees. And again, it would be recorded simultaneously with the CR.
And so what you're asking for today would be just signing, the commission being willing to sign on the CR as the co-holder, just generally, and then
with details to be worked out with this memorandum of agreement, so that could be maybe a contingency. The city would agree to take on an interest in the CR as a secondary grantee, with Mass Audubon as the primary grantee, maybe contingent upon coming up with an agreeable memorandum of agreement with Mass Audubon. That might be the easiest way to kind of put it. And then I would have someone from Mass Audubon, possibly Dave Rothstein, who's working it out, come in and talk with you, and you can kind of hash out the agreement, between the city and us.
So a hypothetical question, because we can't predict the future, can the memorandum of agreement, and since you brought up enforcement, can it be written that at least there's a potential to decide how to proceed on a case-by-case basis? Because, problem one next year might not be anything like problem 2, 3 years down the road. And you might not, if it's
write it any way you want to write it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think good, yeah.
So, yeah, okay,
It makes sense.
all right, yeah. Thank you.
Who knows what issues different issues come up that we haven't even thought of.
Yeah, I don't know if we'd want to have it exactly case by case, because then nobody knows who to call for when a thing comes up.
That's a good point. Yeah,
but that can all be hammered out when we talk to Mass Audubon.
Yeah.
I would think so. It's interesting, as the grantor, as the potential grantor in this for Kestrel, when I think of CRs, there's two types of enforcement in general. There's something that the grantor, us, that we're doing wrong or we're seeking approval from under the CR. Then there's third-party issues and how those are dealt with. A neighbor is dumping on the property. People start taking ATVs on it. So all those things we've worked out. We actually have a pretty good third-party section in the CR that we drafted with the city of Northampton that seems to work pretty well. But from our perspective, I would think having the process streamlined, going to one entity for approvals would kind of make sense. But then how you work out, the communication between Mass Audubon and you, letting you know what's going on, what's being approved, and then how you handle, if there's a disagreement, or if you want to be involved in enforcement or not of a particular action, that would all be laid out in the agreement. So, we'll kind of know what will happen. And we'll just know we'll be dealing with that one entity just to, again, for streamlining and efficiency.
What would enforcement look like? We just send them a letter, stop using your OPD on this land?
Well, so that would be a third party, kind of issue. So for us, it would be, say we were, the most common thing would be, for instance, there's an allowance for certain structures, say it's an agricultural structure, but it says, with approval of the grantee. So Kestrel would have to go to whoever the grantee is, probably in this case Mass Audubon, and say, we are proposing putting this sort of agricultural storage shed on the property, and there's mechanisms set forth in the CR within a certain amount of days. You have to get back and say, okay, what you proposed fits what's allowed in the CR, footprint, materials, that type of thing, and then get back to us. If we did something, if we went and just put a building in, that would be an enforcement, opportunity there. Or if the building we built didn't, fit what you had approved and the CR allows, that would be enforcement. You could go after us to take the building down, that type of thing. The third party violations get a little, tricky. What the current CR draft says is basically that the grantees will not, because it's our responsibility as the grantor actually to go after third party violators under the CR.
Okay.
So if someone's coming on, it's us to go after. And the way the CR is written right now is that the grantees won't go after us if we're taking reasonable steps to address that issue. Okay. So it kind of gives us time, and it's escalating. If it's an ATV issue, did you put up signs? Did you put up a fence? Did you try and identify who the violators were and notify them? As long as we're kind of going after that, the grantees won't take legal action against us. It's and then we can jointly, the grantor and the grantees can go after that third party if we decide to, either singly or jointly. That's how the third party violation section goes.
Any other questions from the commission? Dan, any questions?
No, not right now.
Any questions from the public?
I think that means you.
And who else is online also? We have
Thank you for clarifying.
Oh, yes.
There's here, she's for the next item.
Garrett's still hanging in there. All set?
Does Garrett have a question?
He's not raising his hand or anything, so unless he's,
Can he raise his hand?
I assume.
If he wants to.
Okay.
Yes, he can. Yes, he can if he wanted to, but he's pretty sure he's here for the next item, so.
All right, so can I get a motion that the city of Easthampton would enter into a co-holder of the CA for the property at 385 Main Street with Kestrel Land Trust, provided we can work out a memorandum of agreement that satisfies our concerns.
I make a motion that.
Do some of that stuff.
That we do what Jay says.
Yes, enter into a co-holder of a CR with Mass Audubon with Kestrel Land Trust with 385 Main Street, with contingent upon us being able to work out acceptable memorandum agreements.
Perfect.
That was really good.
Nice.
Second.
All right, roll call. Commissioner Carr.
Aye.
Commissioner August.
Aye.
Commissioner Weeks.
Aye.
Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Excellent.
Cool.
Thank you very much. Thank you for agreeing to support the project. I look forward to continuing the relationship for the coming months.
So what do you need from me? Do you need to
I
sign
don't think
something?
anything right now,
Okay.
honestly. What will happen eventually is the state CR review office will get back to me.
Right.
With their comments on the CR, and I will kind of share them with everyone just to kind of see where that is going. And then I think simultaneously, kind of in parallel, we should get someone from Mass Audubon here so you can kind of start hammering out that memorandum of agreement at the same time. So that way, when the CR is ready for local signatures, the Concom will obviously have to sign off on it, as will the mayor and I believe the city council.
In blood.
Hopefully not that, doesn't need to be notarized. Yeah, so we'll have all the documents kind of prepared, and Mass Audubon will also be putting together a baseline report as well that will go with the CR and will be simultaneously done or be done slightly before signatures. So all the documents will be ready, and hopefully they'll be ready to go by mid-June this year.
Cool.
Well, thank you again.
All right, have a great night.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I would request that the commission take item 9C out of order for the
Motion
forest
to
cutting
take
plan.
9C out of order.
I'll move that we take agenda item 9C out of order.
We have a second. All right, roll call vote. So Commissioner Carr.
Aye.
Commissioner August. Commissioner Weeks.
Aye.
And Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. So just as a quick refresher, so at the last meeting, talked about how the commission had received a, where did I put it? A forest cutting plan application. And I've been in communication with Sean Libby about this, and what the commission is empowered to do is only submit comments for DCR's consideration of their review and potential, approval or not of the forest cutting plan, because DCR does that under their own law. It's exempt under the Conservation Commission as an agricultural activity if it's approved by DCR. And I have been working with Sean Libby. I've been trying to set up a site visit with the person who submitted the application, Mr. John Edwards, the plan preparer. He was responsive and said that they'd be willing to do that, but we haven't settled on a date yet. It has to work between him and Sean Libby and myself, or, the Conservation Commission. But certainly once the date is chosen, I will let you all know. And you can join us, those who are interested. And I'm also working on laying out and organizing all the potentially associated parcels with the project, in that the map that was provided to us is not very clear at all of where the extent of where they propose to cut is. And there are a number of very small city-owned parcels. And I actually would like to share this map that I generated quickly with you all so you can get an idea of what I'm describing here. But I basically tried to use the data available through the assessor's office of all the potential areas that might be included that are surrounded by or encompassed by the Bernard and Julia Gall properties. So I'll start with the map, and then I'll go over my list here in a second. Zoom in real quick. So map of possible parcels associated with 2024 Groveland Cutting Plan. This red area is where, taking a very conservative estimate, it seems like potentially could be part of the forest cutting plan. These two large parcels here on the end, 97 and 93, are owned by Bernard and Julia Gall. So I included them, and that's kind of this entire space are primarily parcels owned by Bernard and Julia Gall. There are some that are not, including this continuation of the row of Mountain View Road, which is kind of more of a paper road. There's a dirt connection here, then it becomes just a paper road. It's not paved or anything back this way, but that's listed on the assessor's office as being a public city right-of-way. Then there are all these other parcels, these very small parcels highlighted in blue, are also city-owned, but you can see they're kind of in the middle of all this. These two parcels, the green and the purple dot, they only have those colors because they didn't have a number associated with them, but they are also listed as not being owned by Bernard and Julia Gall. So they, in theory, should be avoided. This big yellow area is owned by Julia Gall. It could be a part of where they're planning to cut. Mm-hmm. I just highlighted it because this is showing that it is one big irregularly shaped parcel. Even though you see these hash marks inside that seem to indicate potentially that those are individual parcels, they're not. Only the ones that have numbers are. So this is all one big parcel, essentially. And so then the rest of this map corresponds to this chart I made, essentially. And it lists out all the parcels that are on the map and who the owner is, essentially, and with the parcel ID and the address listed and the acreage, just because. But, a lot of them are owned by Julia and Bernard. Julia is the only listed landowner. So I highlighted ones that don't include her, even though these ones are for Bernie Gall. But there are City of Easthampton, Matt Gall, And then folks who aren't Gauls, who just own interspersed pretty small parcels. You can see these sizes, 11.11 acres. They're small, but it matters in that the only application can only be for the areas that they
So
own.
how do they avoid these little traps?
That's a really good
Driving
question.
skitters wildly through the whole place.
Well, so just quickly, this paragraph's just describing what I all just told you about how the map tries to make sense. But basically, my understanding in my discussions with Sean Libby is that it's important that the city provide this information so that it's clear to him that like it is not all one owned by them space, and we have an idea of where they are. And then I'm looking to him to tell me if there's more information that he needs from me to help make sure that it doesn't include the areas that we own at the very least. And then certainly I'm curious to know what the notification is to those who own the other small parcels in there. And I provided this to Sean Libby. So he has this, and it should make it clear that there are pieces that their map make it not clear whether or not they know that that's the case or not. So I haven't heard back yet about that.
And then also within that yellow area, there's IDWs.
Well, so in this map, what I tried to make a note about was that this does not represent the wetlands at all. It's not the intent. They don't come up on the assessor's map in the way that we want them to, and we don't have a delineation of this area. So I made a note in there in that paragraph saying like, don't use it for that. But yeah, this area certainly has a lot of wetland resources within it.
But they're IDWs, so we don't have jurisdiction.
Well, it's not clear. Some of them might be. Some of them might be VVWs. Either way, we don't have jurisdiction because it's exempt agricultural activity.
Oh, right.
So I don't know what they are. It's a good question.
Yeah.
But and there's stream systems in there and potential vernal pools, a lot of interesting things. But if it's
out of our jurisdiction.
in theory, yeah. So that's my understanding at least. And so what I've created here is just an important piece of the comment that I want to submit to Sean Libby. The other pieces are noting the past history of a violation occurring in this area from unpermitted cutting going on there. Sean Libby was actually the person who discovered that illicit activity. Yep, he's the same person, so he's very familiar with it. But the resolution, that was something that the commission was able to pursue enforcement because it was a violation under the Wetlands Protection Act. They didn't have a forest cutting plan for that activity. And it was very large in scope, and so it was elevated to DEP. DEP enforce the requirement that they apply for an ANRAD, and the ANRAD, which would be something just good delineation of this area. The commission denied the ANRAD because they found there to be insufficient information provided to issue an ORAD, that goes with it. And I realized that this happened right when I started, but DEP found that even though the commission denied it, the only requirement was that they apply for that ANRAD, not that they successfully obtained the ORAD. And so that enforcement order, as I understand it, has been resolved, even though kind of admittedly in an unsatisfying way. In that like nothing really, we didn't get an ORAD out of it, so we still don't have a delineation.
We had another enforcement that had to do with dredging of some of the.
My understanding is it was related, though that was part of it, because they were doing that work to facilitate the cutting.
Yes, okay.
Yep, so that was part of it. But I need to call DEP again to see if, now that I'm more educated about it and like understand, that was like my second meeting. I was reading the minutes, I was like, this is crazy. But when I got that information from DEP, so I'm gonna call them again and just pick his brain about it to get the info. But that would be another part of the comment that I wanna submit to DCR. And then also, of course, just about that there are numerous wetland resources there and important and unique, potentially unique habitat, the uncertified vernal pools, things like that. Just general wildlife habitat concerns. Yeah.
They're gonna work on it and hopefully not just sign it off and walk away.
Yeah, and my understanding from the last communication I had, which was last week with Sean Libby, is that I don't know that he's actually received the forest cutting plan yet or not. So, okay.
I messaged him with my personal concern.
Okay.
And he wrote back today.
Oh, good.
He said, I finalized all 3 plans for your commission to review. This certifies that all relevant statutes have been substantially complied with. We, Kathy Traeger, and your commission are also trying to schedule a meeting in the field. Plan prepare for the Groveland Street proposed harvest. It would be best to discuss. I was asking what private landowners are allowed to do in the course of the timber harvest. both within jurisdictional areas and in upland areas as a group so that everyone's on the same page. But he said, yeah, I have not to date received the forest cutting plan.
And when is that from, that email?
Today.
Oh, okay, that's really helpful, because that was my understanding too, but from like a week ago. So it hasn't started, as far as I understand, it hasn't started the time. We have 10 days to submit our comment, but if he hasn't received it yet, I don't think it's the 10 days has started.
Yeah, he said, I do empathize with your concerns, and from what I've been told, DCR has not received the forest cutting plan to date.
Okay.
I would always encourage landowners to pursue long-term forest management goals. However, this plan is clearly designed for short-term income generation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we talked more about what we wanted to include in the comment, and there might be even more that I said, but Garrett is here. Hi, Garrett. You made a note that he submitted a comment to the commission himself, not on the behalf of Pascomet Conservation Trust. It was on his own behalf. He made a note here in the comment in the chat to make that clear, which is helpful. So thank you. But if it's okay with you, Garrett, I'll read it to the commission, and then if you have anything to add, you're welcome to add it. I know previously you said you were okay with it, so.
He needs a thumb.
I'm good. Yeah, I made him hi, Garrett.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, thank you.
You've covered most of it very well already.
No, I appreciate that. No, these are really comprehensive comments as well that really mirrored a lot of our concerns, so it was helpful to receive. But I'll read it now. So these were received February 20th from Garrett Stover. Dear Conservation Commission and Planning Board, I have learned that there is another extensive logging project proposed, this time for the wetlands off Lawrence Road near Groveland Street. I don't know the particulars of the proposed cutting, but as the city reviews this, it may be worth noting and looking into several possibly relevant items. Around 2018, the Galls engaged in a previous unpermitted logging operation in the same location or nearby. That previous illegal logging in a rich wetland area alarmed and attracted the attention of both the Conservation Commission and eventually the Department of Environmental Protection. At the time, for my own understanding, I created a map of regulatory reviews / enforcement orders with the notation ACOP 00001958 in this area, based, I believe, on the Conservation Commission agenda. That number may be a DEP tracking number, but I can't confirm that. You will probably be able to locate the relevant information. And just as a little aside, this is not part of his comment. That was the correct identification number, Garrett. Thank you. That is the one that the DEP uses for enforcement orders, with what they call them ACOPs. So that was correct. But now continuing with his message, during the same period, the Galls were proposing to lease 2 tracts there or nearby for development of what is now the Beacon Solar LLC photovoltaic installation. In city review of that project, I believe, but again, can't confirm that the proponents pointed out that their plan, situated in existing open fields, did not involve cutting any mature forest. Perhaps the city's approval was based on the woods being preserved, with permit conditions reflecting that put in place. If so, that might put this current logging plan in a different light and require its review by the planning board. Finally, and perhaps most critical, please note that the city itself owns 6 paper lots in the heart of the woodland and wetland there. There are another 7 lots which are privately owned. I hope that all these landowners have been notified of the planned cutting, that Easthampton will safeguard its small but significant natural habitat holding there, and that none of these tracts will be damaged or destroyed by the logging. It would be appropriate to hold the strictest of standards and exercise vigilant oversight of any timber cutting in this extremely sensitive area. One recognized as critical habitat by the Commonwealth, as shown in the attached map. Sad to say that the current logging in critical habitat on Mount Tom, that Easthampton forever and always says is its most treasured natural area, and that the state itself views as a vital, biologically rich island in a sea of suburban and urban development, doesn't bode well for this less prominent but no less precious natural area. I hope that is not the case. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Garrett Stover, Northampton. So he also included the 2 maps, which I can show on the screen here in a second. Let me pull those up. Not this one. And so, yeah, Garrett, I mean, if you have anything you want to add to that, you're welcome to do so while I'm pulling this up on the screen, but let me share it real quick.
Nope. It was such a masterful job that I can't improve on it.
Okay.
So how do these little isolated inholdings happen?
I don't know. I guess they sold them. I don't know about with the city parcels. Garrett, you may have an idea of what happened there.
Yeah, what is the paper lot?
Yeah, I think it dates back to the 60s, and it's kind of like selling the lots in the Everglades, that someone thought that you could sell off these postage stamp lots, and it might have been even prior to zoning. And clearly the subdivision never quite took off. But the map that you showed from the assessors with all those X plus marks, that was the original subdivision plan, I assume.
So what are we looking at?
So this is a map that Garrett submitted with his comment that just shows natural heritage, endangered species biomap, core habitat in vernal pool, core, and then critical natural landscape and / priority habitat, locals aquatic streams. I have a little update here blocking it. Local aquatic habitat, streams / pools, protected land, and land owned by the Gall family versus owned by Easthampton. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Garrett, but those cores and kind of landscape designations are things that are provided through the Biomap 3, which is interesting and helpful information in terms of habitat functions and values, though doesn't necessarily indicate protected status or jurisdictional areas to the commission, unfortunately. But it is still interesting and helpful information to know how those things can function. We've already established previously that there is no priority habitat within the potential cutting area, as I understand it. And it sounds like, based off what Garrett has provided here, that seems to be the case, but nevertheless is valuable habitat for these functions and values. Yeah. And so having it on the agenda tonight, I wanted to know if the commission had any other comments they wanted to, like something new and different that they wanted me to try to consider adding, in addition to what we've already talked about at the last meeting and tonight. And then also, just to provide you guys that update with what we're doing with it.
I don't think anything for me to change anything that we're asking for, but anyone else have any other new concerns or observations?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been brought up with, an emphasis on the potential wetland habitat and pools. The one thing which confuses me, and this just reflects my lack of background here, you shared a document last meeting where they expressed the amount of cutting in cores, I think. And I guess the way my brain conceives this thing is, can they say how much acreage or square feet of land is to be cleared? Is there a way of making that equivalence?
So this says location. I'm looking at the forest cutting plan application that we received, which hasn't been submitted to DCR, so they might, a modified version might get submitted to DCR, just as a caveat, or just as like something just to keep in mind. This says that it's location Easthampton Road, Groveland Street, acres 25, volume MBF, which I'm assuming means board feet.
So,
Mean board feet.
no, M would be used as either 1,000 board feet or 1,000,000 board feet.
It's 1,000 board feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it lists 275, volume of cords 23, volume of tons blank. And then they provided, this hand-drawn map of where they're gonna do the cutting, but I can't match it with what we have.
And I guess a related question, I have this sense, even though it hasn't been said, that they're not proposing a clear cut, but they're gonna remove a lot of timber for sale. So it's more of a selective cut, which would leave a lot of standing timber. And so I think my question is that correct?
I think I disagree with you. Based on
It's a
kind
good
of
run everything else
discussion.
over, trying to get the larger trees out.
Yeah, okay.
Based on my discussions with Sean Libby, he was, and you were kind of just reading that email from him there. It's more focused seemingly on kind of a financial, just getting the harvest that they can out of it, to the extent that they can. I mean, in here.
Wasn't there something though about hemlock?
Yeah.
And what are the?
What I can write, what's listed here, at least in this application that we received, was that the desired future condition was the future desired condition is a pine forest able to regenerate back into pine. The remaining stand will be free to grow with large and small openings, which will allow sunlight. The stand is over mature and mortality is present and needs to be harvested to reduce the threat of blowdown and mortality. It says, and this is a different section, it says how will regeneration be obtained / protected? And it says they're using a combination of AD and SE, which is describe the species present and how the regeneration will be protected. And then for SE, describe the source of seed and number of seed trees per acre. So it says they're using a combination of the two. And the notes are a seed tree cut will be performed. Trees in WH1, 2, and 3 will be retained at a 50% level. Some regeneration is present and directional felling will be used to protect this.
Yeah.
Filter strips will be kept at 50% forest cover. So, I mean, we're getting to the limits of my understanding in terms of forestry practices, but.
Well, yeah, and my question reflects that I just have no familiarity with this, so.
I know we don't deal with it a lot. It doesn't come up a lot for us, these forests, until recently, apparently, so.
So would the forester come and speak to us?
I haven't, they don't need to. There's no requirement for them to do that at all. I don't know if they'd be willing to do that or not. I was frankly surprised that they were willing to let me come to a site visit because they certainly don't need to do that either. But I did they were really friendly and forthcoming. Mr. Edwards, when I called him, he left me a really friendly message being like, yep, we can do that. Like, and I kind of explained that like it would be, at the very least, would be a really good educational opportunity for the commission since we deal with it so infrequently. So he seemed pretty forthcoming. But I mean, I can ask him, but I don't know what difference it would make in that I feel like our comments would be the same no matter how they do the cutting. But absolutely, we can ask.
Yeah.
But I think we will still be able to be productive, even if they say like, no, we can't do that, just because of time or that might be a cost to the applicant to pay for him to come here. It might not be something that they can do. But I definitely will ask.
So who decides that the forest is mature and needs to be over mature? Is that the forester? Is that the repairer? Is that the person doing the harvesting?
Hold on, I just kept track of my notes.
The forester hired by the people who want to cut the tree.
Well, so yeah, the only information that I have at this point, Deb, is what the preparer, based off of, I'm assuming his assessment, put into the application. So I don't know. Also, in terms of when Sean Libby, the DCR service forester, does his review, if he double checks that or if it's relevant to his assessment or not, because he just needs it to be compliant with the law that's associated with them. So I don't know if information needs to be checked or the accuracy or any of that, unfortunately. I know. Yeah, I'm sorry that I don't have more details about the process on that end because we're so removed from it.
Have you sent our comments to Sean Libby yet or not?
Not yet. I've sent him that map of parcel maps, so that is in. But I was waiting to do the site visit to see if it changed anything else I wanted to add. Knowing that my understanding is we're not bumping up on the deadline to do it because he hasn't received it yet.
Sure.
So my understanding is once he receives it, then that starts the 10-day comment period. But I was hoping to get clarity on when we're going to do the site visit soon.
Yeah, and I will do everything I can to join you on the site visit. Just to,
Yeah,
see
me too.
this.
Bring your boots.
Yeah, bring your boots and
I know where they are. They're
Be
one
careful.
right down in the basement.
So I have a question that may pertain to a previous agenda item. So where 50 Florence Road is, these properties adjoin?
let me pull that map back up and I can show you.
Let's see.
Hold on. Okay. So let me pull it up again. Let me make sure I share my screen for everybody, the folks at home. Okay, so again, this is my map that I made using the data from the assessor's office. So it's not super clear on this map, but basically this is the currently forested area within this red space. The 50 Florence Road solar project and what is now mostly a solar array is just north of it. That's this right here.
Where you've got your cursor moving around. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the area of where it is. I don't know.
Where's the swale?
They haven't made it yet.
Well, where The proposed swell.
I need to look at,
Number 2 is.
it's somewhere in number, probably,
Approximately, that's my sense, yeah.
I need to pull up like an aerial image that shows like the aerial imagery, then we could probably tell a little
Yeah,
better. I can do that now if you guys want me to,
The
but
property boundaries,
Yep.
if you put these two together.
Yeah. yeah, so,
So the question is, they were saying, that they didn't think, what was it, the water would get to the tree line? Is the tree line where they're cutting the forest?
that's a good question. We don't know yet. That's part of the problem, right?
Oh, you mean the tree line
Yeah.
on the 50?
They're,
No,
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is
It's not,
either.
it's not heading in this direction, it's heading
Yeah.
towards that stream
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
It's going, so the previous discussion about the Florence Road grading question was talking about trying to take, there's a ponding issue here, and they're trying to direct the ponded water generally in this area. There's like an open field space, and then have it connect eventually
Not
towards that
the forest
stream.
cutting area.
So it wouldn't go towards the forest cutting area. Your question about, are they gonna cut up to the tree line that exists between these two properties? Unclear,
Yeah, that's
because we
unclear.
don't know the extent of the
Yeah.
cutting, because the map that they provided
Pretty-
is,
We don't
it doesn't
know,
match
yeah.
up well enough for me to
would
tell.
they affect each other?
I don't know, I would say no, probably, but I really couldn't say, I suppose, like how it can change conditions in terms of how much water is traveling, if it's traveling from this red box area over there, I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, if where the 2 is,
Mhm.
if they put in the riprap in the swale and we have an overabundance of rain, would the water come down, which was fine, but if they cut the tree line, the next agenda item, if they cut the tree line and they're adjacent, would that affect the water coming down toward the neighborhoods or
Right.
cause erosion or flooding, or is it so minor above that the tree line was cut, it wouldn't affect anyone? Is it, we're talking two separate agenda items, but they're fairly adjacent in the area.
This is a good question, and I think what we needed to do is see if we can get an aerial photo view,
Yeah, I can do that right now.
and then ideally with topo lines on it.
Yep, they can do that
One of
too.
the comments that we send to Sean is concern for if trees are cut right next to a neighborhood, that the water's gonna end up in people's basements. Because if those trees are dead, they're not gonna absorb as much water anymore.
I see what you're saying.
Well, I don't know if one item was gonna affect a second item, depending
Right.
on the cutting on the second.
Okay, this is just a quick zoomed out version. This is where the solar array project is. It's kind
Yeah,
of like this
mhm.
horseshoe. It doesn't include this centerpiece. This is where maybe somewhere potentially the cutting is happening.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so let me turn on the aerial. This one should include, this is from 2021. The panels are not yet installed. So you won't see those here. But certainly it's cleared where they're gonna do it, essentially. This area has panels in it. This is where they were trying to direct, I think like it comes straight, I don't know, somewhere here is where the panels are. And I think they're trying to direct flow towards this part of the open field.
I think you're right,
Yeah.
that's how I'm envisioning.
Now onto your
Yeah.
potential tree cutting is good.
Yep,
Correct.
and,
yeah.
and let me see if I can turn on the topo lines for you all, in case that's
Not gonna
helpful.
be super accurate.
I know, but let's see.
Cassie, I'm still looking at one of the other figures.
Oh, are you? Okay, sorry. Oh, here we go. Thank you. No, it's not frozen. I just needed to switch. Let me know if you can see it.
Yep, I got it now.
Good. Oh, Lord. Not that one.
Yeah,
That was pink.
Yeah, just pink because. So these, I don't know if you can see these topographical lines. They're pretty light. They're here. There's like bigger, more
Yeah.
noticeable ones, but this area, it looks pretty flat.
It's pretty flat.
Just
And so
generally.
is the area where the solar panels are. too.
Agreed, yep.
There's not a lot of.
Varying accuracy here, but just generally, I'm not seeing any
How
like
many feet are
major.
those lines, the top of lines?
Yeah, let's
how many
zoom in.
feet are they?
Let's zoom in. So this one is at 187. 187, this one's at 177. So
10 feet.
yeah, 187 here,
So
177 here.
You can still have a pretty good runoff in an area that's less than 10 feet.
Mhm.
And the photo was 2022, you said?
2021, this
Okay.
aerial image.
So that's interesting. That's not dense forest. They're gonna be, hunting around for trees that they want to cut.
So they may have already, that may be the area they already cut, and the other place to the south there is the area they're gonna aim for.
Yeah, okay, yeah, fair point.
Very roughly, and again, my understanding of this is limited, but I think this kind of maybe was the area of the violation.
Right.
This kind of
Okay.
looser area, less dense.
And below that looks like a thicker area there.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. And
So the empty purple boxes are the paper lots?
parcels, all those
Yeah.
all those are property lines. So,
They're not all empty.
And then below it are
There's no houses or anything.
some of them
the
are,
houses.
which are also parcels. Yep, some of them have houses, some of them don't. Some of them are numbered, some of them aren't. Should be able to actually like click on them and it'll tell
But
us.
some of them are owned privately.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
And that's why I generated the map that I made that has the yellow parcel, the whiter map, because that shows the difference.
It's all property.
Like you can click on each of these parcels and it will tell you who the property
They still
owner
have to
is.
go around this.
In theory,
Yeah.
that's not gonna happen.
So,
So then is it up to DCR to figure out if they cut a certain area of the forest, if those two projects affect each other, and that
That could be one of our comments that,
Yeah.
we're having an issue.
erosion
We're having an issue on
overabundance.
adjacent property.
Yeah, you're gonna have a fun time notifying and satisfying the butters.
yep. So my recommendation would be that the commission can like allow me to include a comment that is related to this grading
Sure.
work that we're gonna have done, just so that they're aware of it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then the other piece, what was, Sarah, you said something that I was like, concerns about runoff, changes in runoff to the neighborhood
Yeah.
and other sites.
Yeah.
And
Can't hurt.
runoff change concerns. So I will add that. And, but again, at the end of the day, it's DCR, basically, you asked who would make a determination, DCR. It's DCR's decision, they approve or they don't. So we just note that this is something that we think they should look into, that it's their decision. Whether they
Unless
do-
want to do it Julia Butterfly Hill.
Oh, what is
Sit
that?
in a tree.
Oh, yeah, unless you want to do that, but it wouldn't be as the commission because it would be illegal. So that would be as your own personal self.
Wow.
Any other questions from the commission?
Nope.
No.
Dan, any other questions?
No, I mean, I don't think the swale thing is going to impact. I just don't really think there's going to be much of an impact off the property or near the wetlands or anything like that. It's just such a small thing, but
Sure.
that's my only comment.
Okay. Any other concerns from the public or questions from the public?
Yeah, Garrett, go ahead.
I'm feverishly making a map with a LiDAR that shows the slopes and the elevation in that area. So I'll email that to you. And if you're still ensconced there in 10 minutes or something, maybe you can show that to the commission.
Okay. We're gonna be here a little while. We have to go back to the beginning.
It's really interesting to see the difference between the topography of the area they're proposing, we think, to log and the area where the solar project is.
Well, and even if you want to rush around, just send it to me when you can. I appreciate that. And then also I would, if you want to, send it to Sean Libby directly yourself in response, because you already have that chain going with him. But certainly I will, I think it's helpful to, if you're willing to send it to us too, I'd be grateful to that.
And I don't think none of those city-owned parcels are protected. It looks like I was just clicking around in the registry of deeds, and it looks the ones that I looked at were taken for non-payment of taxes.
I see.
That's how we.
Oh.
One was taken for non-payment of taxes in 1948, so those are some pretty old lots.
Amazing. Okay, well, that's helpful to know. Go ahead, Garrett.
I just, you're talking a little bit about the lack of leverage that you have on the forest cutting plans, and the fact that you own land right in the middle of this offers a potential opportunity to weigh in as a landowner and not just or for the city to weigh in.
Thank you for making that distinction. That's something that that's what I sent him that parcel list to Sean Libby. That's like a thing I need to talk to him directly and be like, what other, hopefully he can tell me how we can, kind of enforce our rights as property owner in those areas. Because we certainly haven't given permission to cut there, and how to delineate, like make it clear, this is where our property starts and stops, like it's staked out. How are you going to confirm that you're not going to impact these through your operations? So yeah, I agree, Garrett. That's like going to be an important detail for sure. And it's different in terms of the commission can submit comments, but the city has rights to its parcels that it owns. So. Sorry, just making a note.
Were you here for an agenda item? You just here as a curious innocent question?
Yes. Okay, cool. Okay, does anyone have anything else? Otherwise, I'll keep y'all posted.
Sure. Yep.
For this.
All right, let's return to our normal agenda. Public concerns or non-agenda items.
Woohoo. I haven't received any unless you have anything or Garrett has anything. Otherwise, no.
Public hearings or meetings, we have none, yay. Certificates of compliance, we just have the pump house and we were waiting for the city engineer to get us something. I don't know if that happens.
No, not yet, so
Okay.
just kind of continue, please.
So we're gonna continue that one. Anything on enforcement orders that we need to speak of?
Let me double check. Let's see what I have on my little sheet here. No, basically everything is waiting for site visits in the spring.
Did you hear back from you?
No, not yet, not yet. And I figure I'll keep trying until we have a meeting where Julie's here and we can talk about it more. Actually, update for Loudville, I can give it now, is that they're planning to come to the first meeting in March to talk about the status of the enforcement order, but also the status of the main project. And they're getting close to what the plan will be to try to reach a point where they can come for a certificate of compliance or even just a partial certificate of compliance. And they want to talk about how that comes into play with the basin, that it's not clear if it's functioning correctly or not yet. And the other piece is the active enforcement order, how the commission wants to have that impact, how they consider whether or not to issue a certificate of compliance.
Right.
So that'll be discussed at the next meeting. They sent me a letter that I was going to send with the packet for that meeting. So that's why I haven't sent it to you yet. But I figure I'll keep trying with Dr. Hatch until then, and we can go from there. Let's see. Okay.
Any open space discussions?
Nope, no updates, waiting for the spring for that one. And all these spring things, like I'm thinking like end of March, early April is when I'll start putting my feelers out and figuring out what the plan is. Like I'm not just gonna wait until like.
54 degrees today, I think it's spring.
I know, my God, I know.
It's not gonna stay that way.
Yeah. But I'm trying to try to get a little jump on it before like spring. But yeah, so we're working on it. National Pond we already talked about for compliance updates. Pump house, no updates at this time. Loudville I already talked about. 50 Florence we already talked about. 96 East Street, that was the other one. So let me pull that up. Where do I have it? Here we go. Yes. So this is the Mount Tom Trailhead. And it's just stormwater permit only.
Yep.
And so Jeff couldn't be here tonight, but he was able, basically where we left off with this was they made a change to the plan where they installed a basin at the top.
Right.
That wasn't part of the original plan. They didn't go through the strictly correct channels to like have that change happen. And the commission, generally seems satisfied that it's okay, but they want to close it out. And so it's the commission's decision to determine what is required to close out, what you guys are gonna require to close it out. One of the things that the commission requested was an operations maintenance plan. So Jeff crafted that features all the different types of stormwater management structures on the site. And then he submitted that to John Mason, who is the Parks Department head. And he confirmed that he could take on those management roles and duties that are outlined in this operation management plan. And then this plan was crafted using the best management practices in the stormwater handbook for each of the structures. So it's a pretty standard management plan, as it were, based off of what is typically required. And let me see here. I have a paper copy for you guys if you want it, and the rest of the file. And Chef, I'll go through this document that he provided. He said in a letter, can you please provide the following to the Conservation Commission for their meeting tonight? I'm hoping to get a final okay on the stormwater permit for Mount Tom Trail. I'm attaching the following in one packet: the final stormwater maintenance plan approved by the Parks Director, annotated as-built marked up with the minor change for the additional basin, and map showing the stormwater features, original as-built, change order number 8 describing the minor change. Initial basin design plan, which was modified by the change order to add the overflow and riprap, and photos of the additional basin in construction and currently, and then photo of the storm damage that happened, and that's all in here. That kind of prompted their desire to have the new basin added. So I can scroll through that and make sure I share my screen so that people at home can see. And the only other thing I'll add, oh, did it close out of it? The only other thing I'll add is that Julie was able to give comments related to this. She said, I'm good with closing this out. My only suggestion would be a map to accompany the photos in the operations and maintenance plan so it's clear where those stormwater features are located on site. I told Jeff about that this morning and he incorporated that in this document that's submitted. Yeah. So he incorporated. Yeah, it's like as close as we get, because again, like unfortunately, it's happened a lot with these city projects is that like we don't get the as-built and then it closes out and we don't have the money to get the as-built. So that was what is being proposed in lieu of really formal as-built. So this is the operation and maintenance plan. Kind of just goes through each feature, starting with the rain garden at the bottom. And it's pretty standard, like basic things that they need to do to maintain it: mow it, minimum biannually, inspect and remove trash monthly, mulch annually, remove dead vegetation annually as needed. The rain garden is shown in location A on the accompanying map. So, I mean, I don't know if you want me to read all of these, which I'm willing to do, but yeah, just kind of going through pretty quick. These various basins. This is the big basin at the top, the new one. You kind of see it's vegetated now. It has the riprap here. It's riprap in the center, and underneath is that perforated pipe that travels the basins like up here, and then it travels all the way to here is the outlet. Here's the as-built with the features called out. This is basically the as-built for that area of the basin, and the perforated pipe is pretty far away. It goes all the way over here and comes out here. Okay. And then the water essentially has this whole area is a big vegetated field. For it to flow down, I think we measured it as like 375 feet or something before it reaches the edge of the property line. And I've been to the site last Thursday and didn't notice any, or, very frequently since then, but I've never noticed any kind of like crazy runoff or issues with that. And the issues of runoff within the trail itself have ceased because of this change. So this is area modern modification. This is where they did that new basin. But it's all vegetated, it's hard to see. This is during construction. Sure. I want to zoom in a little, I'm realizing. This is the original basin before they did the construction, and like water would get overtopped and flow down this way. Yep. And then it would hit the trail and then flow down the trail and cause the trail to get wicked washed out. So they instead put a bunch of riprap there. Change order the contractor. This is them putting in the pipe, I think, associated with it. There's the pipe getting put in. There's the outlet, and so yeah, it's just like this big area that's been revegetating since then. This is the swale, so they put this big riprap space here because this was all kind of like getting channeled away when it overtopped. And this is the change request, like financial side of it, just like proof of that being bought, I guess. This is a sketch of that area. This is the damage that the trail was experiencing because of it before the basin existed. which was sad.
Yeah, 3 stars.
Yeah, crazy. Because there's this geotextile, like, I don't know if geotextile is the right word. There's like a fabric underneath this gravel that is like a special size gravel chosen to be, maintain that accessibility for motorized mobility vehicles. So I think that's why it has to have that underneath to like keep it separate or from like going away. But yeah, this all got fixed. This has all since been cleaned up. It looks normal again, like a regular trail. But so yeah, the ask is for the like, because it's just a stormwater permit. There isn't a like form that we need to issue or anything like that.
It's not a certificate of compliance either.
No. So what the commission's done in the past is just voted to issue a memorandum saying that the project is like complete and that the stormwater permit can be closed essentially. And then I just keep it in the file.
A memorandum that it was complete. That's filed.
I'll take it.
I'll second.
Before Dan quits, if we don't even have.
Was there did Dan have any other comments or anything?
No, Dan has no comments.
No comments. Okay. Roll call vote, Commissioner Carr,
Aye.
Commissioner August, Commissioner Weeks,
Aye.
Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Cool. Wow, Jeff's final act with the commission.
There you go.
Close it out. He has a sick kid at home.
Wow.
He was stressing. I was like, it's okay. We're gonna figure it out. But okay, sweet. All right. Carrying right along. Unless anybody has any questions about any other items on the ongoing updates, then the minutes, which I have a copy here. I got Deb's corrections. I implemented those. Here they are.
Motion to approve the minutes. 12/24 meeting.
Is there a second?
Yes, I second.
All in favor, Commissioner Carr,
Aye.
Commissioner August, Commissioner Weeks,
Aye.
and Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Who seconded it? Oh, thanks, Hal. Cool. We already did the Kestrel, we already did forest cutting plan, and then wetlands ordinance. I was sick on the 20th, so we couldn't have our latest working group session, so I apologize for that, and we haven't scheduled the next one yet, but maybe around the 13th. Yeah.
Commission a little bit too, so.
Yeah, so.
It'll be in March,
Okay.
is all I can say, so we'll figure it out, but. And that's it for me.
Anything else?
Anybody? Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
I'm gonna bring less candy next time.
Well,
Disappointing in your
just leave it here. See what happens.
It'll disappear, that's for sure.
Motion to adjourn.
Let's do it.
Is that a second or wearing down?
Yeah.
Commissioner Carr,
Aye.
Commissioner August,
Aye.
Commissioner Weeks, Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right,
Thank you.
everybody.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.